Welcome. You're here to witness the history of Mortal Kombat, one of the greatest franchises with so many interesting, cool characters, great music, striking visuals, controversy, and I love it all. The newer stuff I'm not a big fan of. That's why, for this whole month, I'm going back to the classics and deep diving into the origins of your favorite and my favorite characters. The combatants, brought to life in the best video game movie, its notorious sequel, fun and reasonably daring TV show, the new film. I'll also reference Legacy, Rebirth, and we'll have a touch on MK2, which is delayed until May. So I can rank those characters just or save it for a full review in May. Now, I'm referencing my favorite character, Raiden, and referencing the best version of Shang Tsung, played by the great Kari Haruki Tagawa. So, let's begin with Raiden. Now, Raiden's origins comes from Big Trouble in Little China. Lightning has the hat. He's a thunder god. He shoots electricity. He teleports, so to speak. And yeah, it has been confirmed. Lightning gave us Raiden. And when Raiden first showed up in the game, he was wearing a karate gi, the hat, and he was awesome. Still is today. Then MK2, he had the blue over, which became his most iconic look, and he's changed over time. But when we saw Raiden in the original film, in silhouette with the hat, and then he's walking through the courtyard, which is pretty much from the game. It's a bit different, but it references two stages from the game, as you can see here. Like, he's wearing a robe. He doesn't fight. He does like an arm flip to Liu Kang. He punches a guy. And he zaps Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and he does his teleport. So it's very, very light. But Christopher Lambert is excellent as Raiden. Now, let's talk about Shang Tsung. He's got a great intro. He's fighting Chan, Liu Kang's brother. Like, could have been another character, but from any of the games, just as a reference. But no, they push the story, so it's very cold-hearted opening, but we got a great introduction to a fantastic portrayal. You know, he looks great in that trench coat. I mean, they were all the rage in the 90s. You know, there he is, and then he gets all demonic and freaky. Then throughout, he's getting all the fighters. He's just so calm. He's got that smirk like he's winning these people. And Carrie does such an awesome job. as Shang Tsung, whose origin is David Lopan. Again, from Big Trouble in Little China. You know, Lopan, he has his youthful look, then he has his old man look, the little old basket case of wheels. And you get that with Shang Tsung. He's an old man in the games, and then he comes back young. Now, Conquest referenced that very well. So, Kari Haruki Tagawa is there in all his prowls and great presence. He's got many great scenes where he's shot, you know, he can be on his throne, he can be standing, then he fights Liu Kang. And his costume is a reasonable representation of his MK2 and 3 look. Of course, he's all in black. He doesn't have his mustache, but it doesn't matter because Kari rocks Shang Tsung. Now, talking about rock, let's go with Lyndon Ashby as Johnny Cage. Of course, you all know Jean-Claude Van Damme, Bloodsport. Mortal Kombat was going to be a Van Damme game. He didn't want to do it. It would have been too expensive. So they referenced Bloodsport's attire and Johnny Cage. But Van Damme did pop up in Mortal Kombat recently. So it's come full circle. But yeah, Lyndon, he doesn't wear any of Johnny's attires. He just keeps that green shirt on. But his comedic timing is great. His introduction, that warehouse scene, pretty cool fight. He gets told about the tournament. He has to prove himself that he's not fake. But yeah, Lyndon, he really kicks ass. He's got the best fight in the movie against Scorpion, with Fear Factory Zero Signal playing. And we're in Scorpion's lair. So it's great. And it's the goriest scene. When Scorpion gets his demise, limbs flying everywhere, you got the sweltering sound of the blood and everything. Then you got the friendship photo. It's perfect. So yeah, Lyndon as Johnny is the best version of Johnny. Now let's speak about Scorpion. His introduction along with Sub-Zero is sweet. It's got cool music. They just walk through that door, owning it. Light reference to their rivalry. But Scorpion, he looks haunting. You know, his eyes. And then the infamous spear coming out of his palm. You know, his costume is perfect. We see him a bit, well, he's taken care of by Raiden for a bit, and then he comes back. He's standing there with his power pose. And of course, he fights Johnny in technically the Living Forest. Like, it's an orchid, but it's a Mortal Kombat movie. They're fighting amongst the trees. It's a nice reference to the Living Forest. And then Scorpion, he does the get over here. Spear's going around, teleports into his lair. Then there's that awesome fight. And then Scorpion's taken care of. Now, taking care of business, Bridget Wilson. She replaced Cameron Diaz. And Bridget, she really does well as Sonya. Her costume loosely references ones that she's worn. We see her chained up, reference to MK2. And yeah, she's got another badass introduction. She's at the club. We see Jax. And of course, it introduces Kano later. But yeah, Bridget Wilson, she's got good comedy. She kicks absolute ass. She has her romance developing with Johnny. And I have to say, out of all the Sonyas of the films, Bridget is top. She is top. She does so well. You know, and she should have returned for Annihilation, but, you know, she left her impact. Now, an impact. Robin Shu, as Liu Kang. Outstanding casting. His performance is just... He goes all out. At the end, his costume does reference the original. He does all his moves. He's in another one of the best fights against Reptile. He takes on Shang Tsung. He's in the short but sweet fight with Sub-Zero. And he fights Katana. And yeah, gets flipped by Raiden. So he gets taken to the wolves, basically. But yeah, he does well. I mean, look at the hair. Total rock star. So he has a number of great scenes, paced. Trying to figure out who Katana is. Fights Reptile, which crazy. And yeah, helps his brother's soul be free at the end. Now, let's talk about Reptile. So we get his lizard form. We won't get that in the games until 4 and a few others after. So he's there, he does his invisibility, he does his acid spit, then he's turned into the ninja. We get the voice sample saying Reptile from MK2. He gets full ninja, the mask is awesome, his costume, and it's a sweet fight. Like, he's owning it for most of it. Then he loses ground and then he gets defeated by Liu, but it's a fantastic scene. There was lots of injuries on this movie. Robin broke a couple of ribs, and that takes in the film. It was a second edition because there wasn't many fights originally, but they gave us 2 of the best. Liu vs. Reptile, Scorpion vs. Johnny, but Keith Cook as Reptile, again, he's a great version of the character. And Keith Cook would return as Sub-Zero in Annihilation. Now, speaking of Sub-Zero, played by Francois Petit, who worked in WWE as a ref. He has that great intro along with Scorpion. He freezes Sonya's gun. He does his ice grenade to the monk, and he explodes. He has a really short fight with Liu Kang. His mask is all icy, which is in Mortal Kombat X. And again, his costume, they're all good. The ninjas in this first film are great. They're very well portrayed. Chris Casamassa as Scorpion. But yeah, Francois, he could have had more fighting, but there was so much action. Short and sweet fight, but he made an impact. Well, he gets impacted by an icicle, so yeah, and his face at the end, he's wide-eyed and he freezes over. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, Talisa Soto as Katana. Yes, she does a bunch of seeing around, walking and talking. She doesn't fight, and Katana wasn't in the original, but hey, you needed to round out the cast with a couple of ladies, and Talisa's being called a bit wooden in this, but hey, she has a bit of class. She does fight. It's a very basic fight on the beach, but it's well shot. She gives clues. She's scolded by Shang Tsung, but she helps. She helps, and it's good. Now, speaking of good and everything, let's go to Trevor Goddard as Kano. Now, Kano's origin, obviously the Terminator, who is now in the games. Trevor Goddard as Kano, perfect. Now, Trevor wasn't Australian. He was English / and or British. Claimed to be an Australian, so he did a Cockney accent, which John Tobias and Ed Boon thought was Australian, so they made Kano Australian. And then Josh Lawson played him. But Trevor Goddard, when you see him in the club, he turns around, he's metal face, he's gruff, he's, he does his speech, just like my daddy taught me, man to man, hand to hand. He almost lost his lunch. He studied Sonya's moves. He says baby a lot. He's just cool. He's a bit of a dork, but he's funny. And Sonya does her Hurricanrana on him and gives him a break. But Trevor Goddard, due to having the metal face, his quotes, he's brawling, his comedic appeal, he still remains the best Kano. He does. I mean, he's just ahead of Josh because of the metal face. And had Josh had his metal face as Kano, he'd likely be above Trevor. But he's just there. He's just on the shoulder saying, hey, buddy. But Trevor is number one. Now, let's go to Goro. We got a performer wearing a animatronic head and shoulder piece on top. Apparently, it screwed up his neck and back, but the guy soldiered on. Goro has, a couple fight scenes. He fights Art Lee. Now, that could have been Jax. Jax is in the film for a little bit. He could have gone to the tournament, tried to help Sonya, faced off against Goro, and Goro rips his arms off. But no. So we got a little bit of Jax. For what it's worth, the guy did alright. He did what he was given. And that actress passed away. But, yeah, art scene, it could have been Jax's fight. The Mortal Kombat films really don't fully do justice to the characters. I mean, you have them all there. You invent brand new characters who don't even get referenced in the games. But yeah, Goro, he's menacing. Funny stuff happens to him. Johnny does a split punch. Shang Tsung calls him an imbecile, but Goro is a great standout for the film. And yeah, he does sort of a couple moves, and when he's fighting Johnny on the mountain, that's fresh out of MK2. So there's a lot of game references in the first film. It's great, and Scorpion, he does his toasty fatality. Of course, the fireball by Liu Kang, the bicycle kick. And they're all very accurate. Like, they all do their moves. Kano, he has his knife. He does the slashing. He doesn't do his laser eye. He doesn't do his headbutt. But they're all there. And the stages are reasonably referenced, like, as you can see in the photos. So, yeah, Mortal Kombat, 1995, 30 years old. Great soundtrack. Great video game movie. It is dark. It does have gore. Just enough for one scene. And many of the fights are spectacular. And yeah, right at the end, when all the fighters, they're free, they're safe, we get a cameo by Shao Kahn, voiced by Frank Welker. Now, it was said to be a CGI effect, but there was a photo recently released of a mask. So it was someone performing as Khan. You know, he's menacing. He says his line, "You weak, pathetic fools." He's come for their souls. And fighting poses, I don't think so, and the end. So, next Monday, it's time to talk about Annihilation and ranking the next set of characters. So, I'll scare you later.